some people in this room that are designers. So it's always a fun event. Please consider coming. Okay, so what you're going to be doing this time is writing one paragraph for each one of the presenters. And then you can submit it by paper or by Dropbox. Doesn't really matter. I'm sure most of you prefer to do Dropbox because it involves getting your printer to work and don't have to come here. So just a paragraph on each one. I think the seminar worked out really well. There were a lot of really great speakers, and we've really grown as writers, I have to say. So I'm pleased about that. Congratulations. So today we have 4 people speaking. One of them is Hannah Doster. She's going to start out. She's a junior from Cranston, Rhode Island, and she's a TMD major, but minoring in PR. And her talk is about Schiaparelli and surrealism. So she's going to take it away.
Hi, everybody. Hi, as she said, my name is Hannah, and today my presentation is going to be about fashion and surrealism in the 1930s. And I'm also going to be talking about how fashion and art sort of influence one another culturally throughout history. So throughout the semester, we've had presenters who have given us various examples of technology and art in the world of fashion and clothing production. Art has been shown as an influence, as an outlet for inspiration, and in last week's presentation, as a direct source of material. Historically, there's always been a relationship between the fashion industry and the movements that seem to influence all aspects of culture and art. The influence of the art world on fashion has been seen in the Art Nouveau, which can be seen on the left, movements of the early 20th century, the pop art movements of the 1960s, as well as the Art Deco movement in the 1920s, which you can see on the right, which has been stated by the Victoria Albert Museum to have perfected all forms of design in the form of fine decorative arts in fashion, film, photography, transport, and product design. So for my presentation, I will be speaking on how the fashion of the time and the works of the surrealist art movement in the 1930s affected one another. Pop Art Meets Fashion, an article from the Star Tribune written by Kristen Tillotson, explores this phenomena of art and fashion changing and inspiring one another. The article examines the work of Margot Seigel, a fashion journalist who in 2009 organized an exhibit at the Goldstein Museum of Design entitled Intersections, Where Art Meets Fashion. Fashion has always had a place in art, Seigel said. You look at a Sargent painting, and you see how beautifully the subjects are dressed. You read profiles of designers, and they're always saying that they were influenced by so-and-so, the artist. They say that Dior used to check which colors a painter friend of his was going to use, and then use the same ones in his collection that season. In her collection of pieces for this exhibition, Seigel found that the two worlds often inspire one another and bring about change through inspiration. An exhibition currently showing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art explores a similar idea. Entitled Impressionism, Fashion, and Modernity, it is described by the Met's website as, quote, presenting a revealing look at the role of fashion in the works of the Impressionists and their contemporaries. Some 80 major figure paintings seen in concert with period costumes, accessories, fashion plates, photographs, and popular prints highlight the vital relationship between fashion and art from the mid-1860s to the mid-1880s, when Paris emerged as the style capital of the world. I visited this exhibit over spring break and got a look at some of the pieces that they had there. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to take pictures when it's a special exhibit like that, but these are some that are provided on the Met's website. They feature a number of selected pieces from the photos of the exhibit, the Met's website, pieces from the exhibit. Its main focus was to express the importance of clothing in the world of art. Its influences of art and fashion in many capacities, the message delivered by each piece. A quote on the wall written by Charles Baudelaire, who wrote The Painter in Modern Life, read, What poet is sitting in the pain pleasure caused by sight of a beautiful woman would venture to separate her from costume? So the exhibit focused on a lot of different things, something like he would say how a lot of the pieces that were in this exhibition would be nothing without what the women were wearing. And in the two pictures that you can see on the right, there are actually the outfits that were being worn by the people in them. Surrealism, the movement which I will be focusing on today, found its emergence in the early 20th century. Alice Rossworth, author of the New York Times article, The Surrealists Come Back in Design, wrote that, quote, the surrealism art was invented the word surrealism was invented in 1917 by Guillaume Apollinaire and adopted by fellow French poet André Breton in 1924 to describe a radical movement of artists and writers who drew on their subconscious to depict a heightened or super-real vision of the world. Influenced by dreams and by the works of Sigmund Freud and political ideals of Karl Marx, painters, writers, and other artists used their works to break down mental boundaries and to expose the innermost parts of human nature and psychology. Influential artists of this time include the likes of Salvador Dali, René Magritte, Andre Mason, and Max Ernst. Their work was quoted as being the absence of all control except by reason, and outside all aesthetic or moral preoccupation. So the previously mentioned movements like Art Deco and pop art are far more approachable than surrealism, and so it makes sense, it is more believable that something like that would have an influence on fashion. But how could something described as, quote, a subversive artistic movement out to challenge accepted ideas and influenced by Sigmund Freud, liberate the unconscious, eventually lead to success with something with as much commercial influence as fashion? To quote Richard Martin, author of the book Fashion and Surrealism, issues abide as readily and lastingly in dress and its conventions as in any other art form. In fact, matters of fashion are especially powerful in their social and political implications and intimate contact with human values. The connection between surrealism and fashion became apparent as artists created pieces that would go beyond the canvas. These pieces would rely on the use of objects to create work. An example of this is Man Ray's Gift in iron, which you can see here. It has been stated by Richard Martin that it identifies the remorseless labor of women. The ironic, surrealist object thwarts its utility and titillates the imagination. The sewing machine was another element utilized in surrealist works. In Salvador Dali's Les Chants de Malheur, which can be seen on the right, or in Joseph Cornell's Untitled Collage, the sewing machine is depicted as a somewhat organic object taking on a life of its own and portraying surrealist ideas of what the machine could possibly represent. While Dali portrayed it as a destructive machine, Martin wrote of Cornell, you can see the picture right here, a formal text art designer, that, quote, he recognized the sewing machine as an instrument of fabrication and fantasy. The sewing machine makes the clothing, but it also makes the woman, as if sewn from the fruition of the machine. A fair amount of surrealist work like this features women as the focal point and as the object of interest, and subsequently it featured issues that would affect women, such as fashion. Another example of this is seen in this image from La Révolution Surréaliste, a surrealist publication from 1925. Featured in the magazine was this image that you can see on the right of a fashionably dressed mannequin ascending a flight of stairs. As written by Ken Grant, author of Surrealism and Visual Arts, the mannequin has left a pronounced right-angled pattern of the floor, tiles behind, upwards to a mysterious region for the surrealists associated with sleep and dreams and thus the bedroom. She continues by saying that the fashionable mannequin becomes a figure for sexuality and dreams, the world of the unconscious that leads away from the limitations of the terrestrial, the rigid structures of law and morality. Just as surrealists found inspiration from the artists of the time, fashion designers began to take note of the surrealist aesthetic and incorporate it into their work. And Elsa Schiaparelli is probably the most noted designer for doing this. A friend of artist Salvador Dali, she created what is informally known as the lobster dress, which you can see on the left. It's printed on silk organza, and it was created in collaboration with Dali's lobster phone, which you can see on the right. The phone is, quote, a classic example of a surrealist object, made from a conjunction of items normally associated with each other, resulting in something both playful and menacing. Dali believed that such objects could reveal the secret desires and unconscious lobsters. In unconscious lobsters and telephones had strong sexual connotation for Dali. This association, along with the placement of the lobster on the lower half of the dress, gives it an erotic undertone that somehow still had a connection to surrealism. Schiaparelli's work continued to display features of surrealist art with the inclusion of an idea that can only be referred to as expect the unexpected. While surrealist artists accomplish this by placing objects in unusual places or warping reality, say through a melting clock, Schiaparelli chose to utilize unconventional embellishments in fabric. For this suit, the image and description of which are found on the Met's database, Schiaparelli, quote, scoured fabric houses to find fabrics highly textured, adding a rough dimension to the overall design. The surrealist elements here, the plastic bug ornaments, are shockingly realistic and in juxtaposition to the delicate pink of the collar where they rest. Insects made numerous appearances in Schiaparelli's work, which, like the lobster dress, can be attributed to her friendship with Salvador Dali. As stated by the Victoria and Albert Museum, Schiaparelli was famous for her creative fashion design and unorthodox, free-thinking approach to detail and decoration. Her skill was in taking everyday garments and using unexpected details and trimmings to make them extraordinary. She was inspired by the work of friend and artist Salvador Dali, who regularly included crawling insects in his 1930s surrealist pictures. The insects seen on this hat and necklace shown here are not only seen as decorative devices, but they're also catalysts for an emotion. One looking at the pieces or one wearing them would immediately associate them with an uneasy feeling of insects crawling on your skin. It's not a pleasant emotion, but neither was much of the work of the surrealist pieces. Dali himself used insects in his work. An example of this can be seen here in the bottom left. That is his piece, The Ants, which he made in 1929. The trend of surrealism continued throughout Schiaparelli's work, especially in the creation of her accessories, one of which you can see at the bottom right. This belt, another provided by the Metropolitan Museum of Art's archives, showcases her tendency to use accessories, especially belts, as a means of artistic expression. The belt's description reads, quote, "Buckles, clasps, decoration, and belts themselves are made of unusual materials, such as plastic and plaster, and in quirky shapes that can elicit a viewer's double take. To pair such an offbeat accessory with a couture garment was just the kind of humorous thing that Schiaparelli enjoyed incorporating into her work. The motif of the hand was widely used in surrealist work, particularly those of Man Ray, which you can see at the top right. Similar to the hand belt, this suit, which you can see on the left, was designed by Schiaparelli, featuring utilization of the human body in a way that would make anyone who saw it do a double take. On it, a woman's arm falls down the front opening as her hair cascades down the sleeve. Like the belt, the hand of the embroidered woman embraces the wearer around the waist and elicits an erotic emotion. Another suit, which you can see at the top left, incorporates an optical illusion, which was another device used widely by surrealists. The two profile faces create the optical illusion of a vase, which in turn makes a strange but somehow sexualized image. Hats were another outlet that Schiaparelli used to incorporate surrealism into her work. The shoe hat, which you can see at the top right, as well as the double slipper beret, which you can see in the middle, are examples of Schiaparelli using her designs to add unexpected elements to the wearer's ensemble. Each hat features three-dimensional forms and reflects Schiaparelli's involvement with surrealism. Quote, "The shape which causes the wearer to view the question what exactly it is, references historical styles, including the traditional Spanish hairstyles worn with large high combs in the late 17th and 18th century." With each design, she made her pieces into works of art, and as written by Dallas Bloom, author of Shocking, The Art and Passion of Elsa Schiaparelli, she epitomized art exterior. She was able to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into the strangely beautiful and contradictory. Women who wore them became surreal aberration. Other designers of this time were also influenced by the surrealist movement. Adrian, a famous costume designer, who worked throughout the 1930s, was one such designer. His work for the film The Women illustrated his use of the aesthetic. In 2010, a lecture was given by historian Aaron M. Rubin entitled Adrian and the Bazaar, and it was presented as, quote, "a focused survey of costume and fashion designs by Gilbert Adrian, highlighting his use of surreal imagery and avant-garde. Examining the designer's source of inspiration sheds light on the important role that modern art plays in fashion design during the first half of the 20th century. The lecture was followed by a screening of the film, which includes a number of surrealist pieces on characters, as well as those seen in the iconic fashion show sequence. I have a small clip fashion show, which I'm going to show you. Sound's not working, but it's mainly just for the visual. There it is. portion of the film that's presented in color, and it serves as an outlet for some of the most outlandish clothing in the film. As the curtain opens, the stage and the models walk on is shown in the image of a second stage with what seem like almost cardboard audience members. Even this presentation could be considered surrealist, as halfway through the show, models rise from the fake audience and seem to bring the still image to life. Ensembles shown feature key elements of surrealism seen in artist work as well as in the designs of Schiaparelli. This piece, for example, features the aforementioned hand motif and even references Schiaparelli herself and her belt with its ceramic hand closure. The dress seen at the top left is even considered to be a reference to another Schiaparelli work, in this case the lobster dress. And the gloves from the ensemble on the bottom right actually have doorknobs attached to the back of their hands. Each features the same idea that one would have to expect the unexpected. Another costume from the film, this one worn by Rosalind Russell, features the surrealist device of the eyes. Similar to Man Ray's tears, the dress features eyes gazing upward. As stated by the description of Man Ray's photo by the J. Paul Getty Museum, quote, "The woman's plaintive upward glance and mascara-encrusted lashes seem intended to invoke wonder and cause wonder as to what is causing her distress." Whether Adrian's design is direct reference or simply a canvas for an artistic motif, the eyes give an otherwise usual outfit an avant-garde touch. Hints of the whimsical and avant-garde were also seen in designs of other designers. Designed by Selvin in 1938, this hat, which has a description reading, "It served as a cheerful and sometimes comical addition to an otherwise sedate or simple ensemble." The 1930s was a time of technological advancement, and the use of synthetic materials made their way into everyday objects, including fashion. The lacquered appearance of this hat is created by the use of the basket-woven cellophane-covered paper, juxtaposed with a charming bouquet of artificial flowers and black silk Oswin ribbon. The flowers atop the crown appear to have just been gently placed there, giving the wearer an appearance of grace and balance as she walks. The materials in this example also exhibit a whimsical relationship between the femininity of the wearer and the sleek modernization of the period. It was another example of expecting the unexpected and to show juxtaposition between things that you would expect to see together. Influences, however, are not always as cut and dry as those seen in Schiaparelli and Adrian. Seen in a number of the aforementioned designs, the human body became a topic of interest for the artistic and fashionable work in the 1930s. As stated by the Victorian Albert Museum, quote, "The representation of the body, and particularly the female body, provides a common thread through the public displays, exhibitions, and commercial activities of surrealists. The body became the subject of intense scrutiny, dismembered, fragmented, desecrated, eroticized, illusionized in the pursuit of a range of psychological, sociological, and sexual concerns. The body was universal. It united the spheres of the physical and the psychological and allowed for an exploration of sexuality in an aspect of modernity. Importantly, the body also proved the primary age of commercialization of surrealism. Within the worlds of fashion and art coexisting at a time when Freudian ideas that took root in the minds of artists and sexuality became culturally less taboo, the body-hugging designs of designers like Vionnet could even be seen as something with a connection to surrealism and the mentality of the minds creating surrealist work. This evening dress, another provided by the Met Archives, demonstrates the overt sexuality that appeared in the 1930s. As stated by its description, evening dresses during this period were made of clinging bias-cut fabrics that expressed the body underneath with every motion. In the advent of the new silhouette in 1930, one Vogue editor proclaimed, "Ungainly women must be jubilant, and for the new clothes are extremely becoming, and a multitude of sins can be hidden beneath the new draperies." Still, a dress such as Madeleine Vionet's design shows that there would not have allowed us to show too much excessive skin. The embroidery is of individual graduated lengths of silk, thread, and pass-through loops of fabric, with each thread forming 2 drops of fringe. Each decoration over a clinging gown would tend to call constant attention to the line of the body underneath. So this thought brings me to my final conclusion of my presentation today. If I learned anything through the research of this topic, it's that fashion is not a sponge that merely absorbs anything around it. It has its own life, and it continually influences art and culture in the same way that art and